I think there are millions and millions of people out there, especially in the UK, whose relationship with alcohol is not serving them anymore. Actually, like, incredibly emotional at the time. Like, I felt so like heartbroken at what in my mind was a failure. One of the worst things when you're going through a tough time, even if it's just like a bad day, is that you feel quite alone in that. And I can tell you for sure from the amount of messages that I receive that is absolutely not the case. That's when I first discovered the power of running to switch off and to press pause for an overthinking mind. I think really I'm just a really regular guy working a 9 to 5, like the rest of us, but went through a really tough time with my mental health for quite a few years, really, in my late teens and throughout my 20s. And then running was a way of overcoming that, helping me overcome that. And so I started making a lot of content about that, and then that's kind of spiraled into a whole thing. And so I guess you could say I'm, a content creator now in that space, but that loves running, and that's kind of who I am.
I guess probably the best place to start this, mate, is going back to the beginning of the journey in terms of what you just mentioned. You went through a difficult time for a number of years. Was there a trigger behind that? Was there a reason that happened, or was it an amalgamation of things?
Yeah, I think I'm trying to think what's the best way to answer that in the most concise way possible. But I think I definitely always had like a predisposition to things like anxiety and always looking for a buzz, really, and an adrenaline rush, I guess you could say. And when I was younger, that started in school with things like messing around and whatever. And, I got kicked out of one school, went into another one, and then you graduate from sort of messing around. And that turns into things like alcohol and whatever else as you grow up. And those things exacerbate the like underlying mental health issues that I was experiencing at that time. So whether it was anxiety, depression, or whatever, you kind of mask it. You mask those feelings, right? Or I did with alcohol. And then, because I was kind of what you'd describe as like a grey area drinker, like my life was still very functional. It was mostly a weekend thing, etc. I kind of got away with just, living in that weekend offending life cycle for years and years and years, and until I just got to an all-time low, really, and even to the point of becoming suicidal and just really quite desperate with where my mental health was at, and then finally thought enough was enough and decided to knock drinking on the head and all the rest of it. So a bit of a longer story there, but it's kind of as short as I can make it, really.
Mate, these things deserve plenty of time, so don't worry about trying to make anything short. In terms of, like you said then, to that sort of 6 months ago when that moment happened where you were at that all-time low, what was it like accepting that? Because that must be a very difficult thing to do, in the fact that, you've, like you said, gone out and been who you are on the weekend for a very long time, and now you're at a point where you're like, this actually has to stop. How did you go about kind of accepting that?
Yeah, it's a really weird one. You go through so many like different ups and downs with it. Anybody that's ever had a really, really rough hangover will know that the easiest time to say you're never going to drink again is that moment when you're really hungover. And as I was this day, like 6 months ago, and I decided I was going to not drink on the head, like ended up affecting work the next day and whatever else. And I was just like, right, enough is enough. So that was quite a shit day. But after that, you have this like initial buzz, which is an excitement about the future, because it's something that you've never done before. I'd done like, a month here and there off booze previously, but never like an extended time. And so I was really excited about the benefits, more so than being like worried about how my identity was going to shift, if that makes sense. But what happens then is, after a couple of weeks or after a month, when that initial shine and excitement wears off, you then start going to things like social occasions where previously you would have been drinking, and all of a sudden you've gone from being the loudest person in the room to feeling quite awkward and all the rest of it. And and that's really, really tough. And then you think, you know, shit, is this who I want to be? You know, can I navigate these situations? Can I become this new person? So that's really when the hard work starts. But what I've found is that, yes, those situations are really, really difficult, and I'm still working my way through the social side of things. But at the moment, it's something that overall has been, you know, massively beneficial for my life, really. And it's allowed me to create the platform that I've created, and got some really exciting things happening, and it's just changed my life completely. So in that sense, it's become more easy to embrace, if you like.
It's not only, you know, if people are watching that and seeing a bit of themselves thinking, you know, maybe I want to start a sobriety journey. It's also those people that aren't going to go sober, but maybe just need a little bit of education to how to approach a mate of theirs that just, you know, doesn't want to drink anymore. Just how to go about that in a social occasion, because I think sometimes that's such a big issue, isn't it? When a mate of yours says, "Look, I've decided, I've made this decision for myself. I'm not going to drink anymore." There's always those few people in the group that are like, "Oh no, come on, mate, let's go, come on."
Yeah,
and I think the education around that is so important.
100%, mate. I completely agree, and to be honest, like, that's what I really want my message to be about. I want it to be quite wide reaching in that sense. And as I say, like, I would describe myself as a grey area drinker, sort of middle lane drinker. And I think there are millions and millions of people out there, especially in the UK, whose relationship with alcohol is not serving them anymore. You know, it might not be an extreme end of the scale, but it's not working out for them, right? But like me, they're carrying on with, you know, what they're doing at the moment, because the idea of taking a break from it, or the idea of quitting completely, is just completely unthinkable. Like, how that would fit into their lives, how that would fit into their friendship groups. And I guess what I want to say is, I think, you know, you don't have to knock it on the head forever, but even if you just take an extended break from it, and I think extended is the key word there, because if you do a couple of weeks, if you do a month, you're probably not going to reset too much. But if you do, I don't know, around 3 months or whatever else, I think then you really start to learn how to live life in the absence of booze, gain a bit of natural confidence, realize that you don't need it, and then maybe, you know, you can return to it in a more selective and you know, in a more healthy way. So yeah. And the other thing I would say is, as well, is that, you know, I think if I was trying to do the journey that I'm doing now 5 years ago, I think I'd find it much harder than now. The sober movement has grown massively year on year. Record numbers of people are not drinking or taking part in dry January or whatever. So it's actually it's becoming a lot more of a thing, right? And so that should be, you know, encouraging for anyone out there who's thinking about it. But yeah, it doesn't have to be this big scary thing. You can just view it as, you know, let me take a little break. Let me see how my life changes, and go from there. You know, so yeah.
I love your Instagram handle, Sound Back on Track. In terms of that as a concept, obviously the road's a very long one, the track is a very long one. But does it feel like you're in a place where you're back on a trajectory to a destination you're happy to be going towards?
Yeah, no, I love that question. It's yeah, without a doubt, mate, to be honest. I think that previously I was just surviving, you know, crossing off days in the calendar, the weekdays, to get to the weekend, and then, you know, escape that, and I wasn't happy. That's the bottom line, right? And the thing that scared me the most was like living a life never reaching my potential, and getting to the age of sort of 50 or whatever, and thinking, you know, what have I, you know, I could have done so much more or whatever else. And the main thing is now, I mean, you know, my mental health has massively improved. Anxiety is much less. I have much less sort of depressive and down days, and crucially, like, I'm on a path now where, you know, I feel like I'm on the cusp of maybe making some of my dreams come true, and like living life on my own terms, and all the rest of it, and like, you know, getting amazing messages from people, and you know, I like to think maybe genuinely making a positive difference in some way. These are all like and also that my personal relationships are so much better, whether that's like with my girlfriend or whether that's with my family. Like my relationship with my parents has gone from like strength to strength. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, it's so nice them being like proud of me and stuff for what I'm doing, rather than coming home hungover again. And do you know what I mean? Like, so like every area of my life has really improved drastically, and I'm really excited about the future now. And I think that's the key thing. Like previously I wasn't excited about the future. I was excited about the next night out or the next Friday. Do you know what I mean? So there's still so much more work to do. Like I'm far from exactly where I want to be. I still have down days, believe me, plenty of them, but they're less. And at least now we're sailing in the right direction rather than just being at a standstill.
Where does the creativity come from? Because I think with Instagram, you're kind of seeing this movement at the moment where, you know, words seem to be pretty powerful. You're one of the people that is, you know, very, very good with words and very good with being creative in that sort of sense, and the way, you know, your content manifests itself. There's a few people that do it well, and you're one of them. Where is that creativity come from? Have you always had that, or is it something you've kind of developed as you've gone through this journey, I guess?
Thanks, mate. Yeah, I really, really appreciate that. It's funny. I never really viewed myself as a massively creative person, but one thing that I have always loved is writing and expressing myself. And I guess most of what I do is that really. It's more so than being creative. I'd say what I just try and hone in on what I'm feeling on a certain day, really tap into those emotions, whether they're happy, sad, or whatever, and then pick that emotion, and then just try and put that on paper in a way that I feel like other people will relate to, if you see what I mean. So yeah, rather than seeing myself as a creative, I think it's just like trying to be really in tune to what I'm feeling and articulating that. But yeah, definitely, you know, writing's always been something I've been passionate about. I studied journalism at uni. I work in PR in my 9 to 5. So writing, expression, conveying messages, all that sort of stuff is what I really enjoy. And then like the video side of things and all the rest of it, I'm kind of like learning as I go. Yeah. The editing and stuff for my videos is really, really basic, man. It's like there's no effects, there's no, the barrier to entry in that sense is really low. But yeah, I guess the expression and writing side is just something that I've always been really passionate about.
It's almost like that you're kind of sharing a journal, which I like, because it's kind of, it feels like you're on this journey that a lot of people will be on, but a lot of people might be documenting those words privately, and you're kind of just documenting them publicly, which what you were saying earlier on about hopefully affecting, other people, or maybe getting a message from somebody else. I think because of the honesty that you're portraying your message with, that's probably likely why you're connecting. Did you ever think you'd be connecting like this at this kind of juncture, I guess?
And it's funny you say it's kind of like a journal, because I actually had someone comment on one of my videos yesterday saying, like, are these your journal entries effectively? So yeah, but I think that people would connect to it in this way. Never in the way that it has grown to. It's really exploded in a in a way that I never expected, and it took a while for it to happen as well. Like if you scroll back through my Instagram feed, you'll see videos with like 10 likes or whatever, and I was sort of going through that way for a little while, and then I don't know, suddenly a group of people just found it, and I guess related to what I was saying. But yeah, no, I never expected it to pick up like and take off in this way. It just seems that yeah, people are really connecting with a lot of the feelings that I'm trying to share, and that's comforting for me in a way, because the biggest learning curve that I found, and what I would try and convey to other people as well, is like one of the worst things when you're going through a tough time, even if it's just like a bad day, is that you feel quite alone in that. And I can tell you for sure from the amount of messages that I receive that is absolutely not the case. Most of us are going through our own things, is the kind of sad reality in some way. And so I guess that's why it's taken off in the way that it has, because so many people share that same struggle.
You've already mentioned kind of the relationships with your family, your parents, your partner. I know that's something you've talked about on your page as well. What has that growth in relationship been like? And is it? I've heard people in the past describe it almost as a light switch. You didn't realize that light was kind of off in those relationships until you nurture it, you make change in your own life, and then suddenly that light is switched back on. Is it kind of that sort of feeling?
I would say it's exactly that. I'd say it is exactly that. It's when you're, living the way that I was, so, getting pissed on a Friday or a Saturday, you don't realize how much that like seeps into the other days of your life. So for me, that would seep into Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, feeling subpar, being a little bit like grouchy or whatever else. And also like, rather than going back and spending like a weekend with my mum and dad, like where they live in Kent, like I would much rather stay in London and go out with my mates and go to the pub or whatever else. And it's like my priorities have changed a lot. And when I'm with, say, like my mum, my dad, or my girlfriend, or my friends, that I'm much more present in those moments. I'm less moody. I definitely still am sometimes. I'm sure my girlfriend will tell you, but much less so. And it is like a light bulb switch, especially with my parents. I think more so than anything. It's just I'm really, really loving how that feels. And I guess it's because that there's like a backstory there of me going off the rails a bit from when I was a young kid. I was kicked out of that first school when I was 12, and I put them through a lot of worry and angst and stress throughout my younger years. And so it's nice that now I'm in a better place and cherishing that relationship rather than being more bothered about going out and doing whatever I was doing. So but I think that light switch is quite a good way of putting it, because it is night and day. So yeah.
I think that sort of parental relationship as you get a little bit older as well, mate. I think we're probably quite similar ages, but as you get into like your late 20s, 30s or whatever, you realize that that's such an important relationship, because when you're in your teens and your early 20s, you're not really thinking about, I don't want to say you're not really thinking about the future, but in some facets, you're not really thinking about the future, are you? You're just thinking about here and now, what's next, how can I keep going forward at a trajectory that's day by day. But I think as you do get a little bit older, you start to think about like, what's 5 years, what's 10 years? And obviously those relationships with your parents, as they get older as well, will change. So it's kind of so important that you make the most of those relationships.
100%, and that definitely has been a realization of mine. Like they're not going to be around forever, right? And I want to make the most of that while they are around. And there certainly is an element of me thinking like, there is some making up for lost time to be done, if you know what I mean, because I was a bit absent throughout the years, and my priorities weren't always in the right place. And so it's definitely time to do a bit of a balancing out there. And it's it's brought me a lot of happiness. So yeah, for sure.
So we've mentioned like family relationships. We've mentioned obviously getting back on track, and with that comes the sort of sporting element of things, and running being a big part of that. How did running first become part of your life?
Yeah. Running has become a massive part of my life. And I first got into it. I came into it quite late, really. I was at university. I was in my third year. So what would I have been like? I don't know, 19, 20, something like that. And I was going through a really bad time with my mental health. That was like one of my real like troughs, to the point of being suicidal. And from the minute I woke up to the minute I went to bed, I was sort of stuck in that much of a dark place, basically. And I got into running because I was actually doing some boxing training at the time. And there were only a certain number of sessions like a week at the uni boxing club, and I needed to get a bit fitter because I was struggling a bit in some of those sessions. And so I went for a run. And the first time I went for a run down in Portsmouth where I was at uni, I think I went for it was I don't know, less than 20 minutes, like probably around 3K or whatever. And what struck me like straight away, and when I got back from that 20-minute run, so I went and did that, got back, had a shower or whatever. And then when I was in the living room, even like 10, 15 minutes after that run, I was like, shit, I haven't thought about anything else, and certainly not anything negative, for the whole time that I was running and a little bit after. And that was so rare to me that I was like, you know, it was kind of like a wow moment, you know, based on how I had been feeling. And so that's when I first discovered the power of running to switch off and to press pause for an overthinking mind. And as soon as I discovered that was, you know, the rest is history then, because that's such a massive benefit for someone that is an overthinker, for someone that is anxious, for someone that gets incredibly down or depressed, to realize that natural power, you know, that exercise has, in particular running. Just got me hooked. And I've taken breaks on and off with it over the years. And anytime I take a break off it, I start to, like, my mental health dips even now. And then, I guess that I got into it more seriously. I say seriously, still not seriously really at all, but like, compared to some of the people you have on this podcast, that's for sure. But over the past, over the past year, more seriously, tried to, you know, I ran my first marathon in Amsterdam last year in October. Just actually signed up for the Lisbon Marathon today, which I'm really, really buzzing for that. Ran a half marathon in Barcelona at the start of this year. And so started getting into like the race side of things. Just as a way to kind of try and take it to that next level. And I've always been into like challenging myself, really. So, I'm really, really looking forward to getting into this new training block for Lisbon and trying to put right. My first marathon didn't go very well, which I'm sure we can get into if you want in a bit, but that's a brief history of my running career today.
Mate, what I love is like how that smile just smashed on your face then when you just started talking about running. For anybody that's just listening to this, but you kind of said, you know, I'm not as much of a runner as some people you've had on the podcast, and I think that's one of the special things about running. Like, whatever reason you do it for, you consider yourself a runner, if that makes sense. Like, I've related to so much of what you've just said. Running it's unbelievable the way that it can just clear your head. It's like your brain can be a washing machine when you wake up in the morning and it's just spinning and something's going on, or you're thinking about this, you're thinking about that, and you're being a lot of the time, brutal to yourself. And then you can get out and on the road, and then suddenly you get home and what I find is people wind me up a lot less because you know that you've done something hard. And I think that's the thing, you know, you've done something hard. This is a very strange analogy to make, but I've got a dog, right? A bulldog, and he's an absolute lunatic if I don't take him for a walk. And sometimes if I've been stuck in the office or editing or working or, you know, on emails for ages, and I'm feeling mad, I sometimes think about him and I'm like, if I don't take him for a walk and he's mad, if I don't take myself for a run, then I feel the same. And that's kind of like, it's a weird analogy to draw, but I think sometimes people don't realize the power of movement, if that makes sense.
Mate, I think that's actually a wicked analogy. Like, I've never thought of it in that way, but it is so true. Ultimately, as you know, humans, we are designed to move, right? And you know, back in the day when we were, you know, still, you know, making fires and chasing what we ate and all the rest of it, that, you know, we had to move around in that way. It's really like deeply wired into us. And so just like, you know, your dog that gets agitated if you don't take it for a walk, we're kind of wired in a similar way in that sense. And that's kind of helped me understand my own, like, you know, angst when I don't get out for runs as well. So it's just completely transformative, mate. And I definitely can relate to the point about like having more patience with people after you've been for a run. It's just like your stress level has gone down a little bit. It's honestly, it's completely transformative in every way. And for me, particularly running, like over other activities, like if I go to the gym and lift some weights, I don't get the same feeling. It's like uniquely running for me, and I don't really know why that is. But yeah, I relate to that analogy a lot, mate.
I think some of it is there's still too much free brain space doing a lot of other things. Particularly like if you're in the gym, there's a lot of stimulus, whether that's music or your phone or thinking about the next thing or whatever. Even if you're like in an exercise class or on a bike, there's a lot going on around you. Whereas I think running is so, you versus you the whole time. Like it's purely individual, unless obviously you're running with somebody, there's a place for that. But you're not really thinking about anything apart from that movement. I think that's what I find anyway, that why running is, just clears your head so well. Let's talk about that first marathon then, mate, because you said it didn't go to plan. I feel like everybody's first marathon doesn't go to plan. I can't remember what marathon, they're still not going to plan. So talk to me about that. Tell me why it didn't go to plan, and kind of the lessons, I guess, that you learned from it.
Yeah, sure. And mate, I was honestly wounded about this for like a long while. This is probably the first time I've like spoken about it in like in proper detail. But basically, so I started training properly. I can't really remember when. I think it was like I signed up for the marathon, I think in like mid-July, and it was in when was it? August or October? No, it was in October. Not August. What we're talking about. It was in October, and I was a little bit shy of the amount of training time that I felt I would need. Can't quite remember exactly how much it was, and I got one of my best mates sorted me out with a training plan. He's a like really serious runner, so I started following that, but I just got into my head that I wanted to run it in sub 4, just because. Like it was just an arbitrary number pulled out of my head, really. But I was like, I was like, it just sounds a lot better to me to say I ran it in 3 something rather than plus 4. And I was so attached to that, and I didn't have the data in training to support the idea that I was going to be able to run in that time. And just out of my own stubbornness, I was like, right, I'm just gonna go for it, right? And so I started the marathon at 5:25, 5:30 pace, whatever it is that you have to run sub 4. I think it's around 5:30 if memory serves. And for the first sort of 25k, I was like, this is on here. Like I'm feeling pretty good. And then got to like 27, 28k, and I was running it with my girlfriend. We were running like a similar pace. A couple of my other mates were running it as well, but one of them in particular was way ahead of us. But anyway, and so it just got to the point where my girlfriend decided to drop back a bit off the pace because she was like feeling it. I was also feeling it as well, but again, because I'm so like stubborn, and when I get my mind attached to like a goal, like I'm gonna give everything to try and achieve it. So instead of understanding that if I was feeling really, really ruined at 27k, I was never going to be able to maintain that to 42 or whatever it is, I just blindly carried on and tried to stay with the 4-hour pacer. And then just got to the 32k mark, and body just completely decombusted, basically. Just fell apart. But in a way, and I'm sure a lot of the listeners of this podcast will have experienced that feeling, but like if you haven't tried to run a marathon or do like a really long endurance event, it's maybe a feeling that you've not experienced. And I hadn't prior to that, and it was like the weirdest feeling. Like I felt like I was going to pass out. Like everything from sort of the hip down was just in absolute agony, and like I felt really sick, faint, and it was horrendous. Like I felt like I couldn't even walk or carry on. Had a bit of a breakdown because I was also like massively like upset as well. And that might sound like a bit stupid to some people, but like when you get yourself so attached on having a goal, and I guess there's a bit of ego involved as well. Like I felt like I'd failed, and I felt awful. And I just decided that I would just, so I'd walk a little bit, and then I would try and run, and I'd walk and I'd try and run. But I kind of landed on the fact that if I kept trying to run, I wasn't even going to be able to walk it in, if you know what I mean, because it was just like, it was kind of hopeless anyway. Like I was that done. So anyway, I walked from about 32, 33k over the finish line, and got over the finish line in 4:40, I think was my like finish time. And yeah, it's like, I was actually like incredibly emotional at the time. Like I felt so like heartbroken at what in my mind was a failure, that I didn't want to talk about it. I didn't want to, share it on socials. I didn't want to, I wasn't making content back then. But and then within I think within a week, we had booked, my partner and I had booked another marathon, because I was like, I just can't let it lie. I can't let that be. Like, I have to put that right. And there were so many lessons that I learned. And so yeah, we go again in Lisbon in October this year, and hopefully we can do a better job of it.
I think there's going to be so many people listening that are going to be able to relate to that, mate. And I mean, I personally can relate to it. I've done that a couple of times badly, and I've gone in with a goal that I thought was particularly right. I did Manchester Marathon a couple of years ago, probably 3 years ago now. And before COVID, I'd done a lot of ultra endurance stuff, and I've done a couple of long distance triathlons, a couple of Ironman, stuff like that. So I know how to get myself in shape. But through COVID and stuff, COVID didn't it? People like I lost a bit of fitness, and I thought, right, I'm going to be able to jump straight back in and be where I was previously. And it was just like I just started again, basically. I just overestimated what I thought I could do. I got halfway and I was like, oh my God, this is awful. And I very, 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 very similar feelings and experiences to what you've just described. It felt like I'd failed, didn't really want to share anything online. Like, no. I just went way too hard over the first half, and then had to kind of just suffer. And that's what the marathon is. I think sometimes it's just such a, people say it's a cruel beast, but it is, right? It's like there's so many things that it takes to get right, and I'd be standing here lying if I was going to say to you, like, the next one, even if you're 100% in the right place, it still might not go right, because they're horrible. or you might get away with one, because sometimes you do also get away with one. You're not quite in the right spot, and you go into it and you're lucky, and something happens and you manage to get through it in a way that maybe you don't deserve. And I people listen to this will have experienced both, but I think it's kind of why the marathon is such a good analogy to life sometimes, because that sometimes it goes better than you think it's going to go, and sometimes it goes way worse than you think it's going to go. But that's the exciting thing, isn't it? And I guess looking forward to this next one now, that's the exciting thing, to be able to put yourself in a position on a start line to give it another go.
100%, man, 100%. I love that challenge, and running's unique in the sense that it is you against yourself. Like, sure, there'll be however many thousand other runners, but really, like, I'm going up against the time that I set myself, and so that just motivates me, because I want to see how mentally tough I am. I want to see how physically fit I can get, and yeah, it excites me, and it just gives, like, having a race booked, it just gives you a reason to get out and train, and I definitely need that at times, and I'm sure some other people listening will relate to that as well. But and I think one thing that I want to say as well is, like, I went way too hard on myself for what I saw in my eyes as being a failure. And really, when you think about it, like, it just makes no sense at all, because you've signed on the dotted line to do something that 1% of people will try and do. Ultimately, like, that's what matters. And as long as you gave something your best, like, that's all you can do. And like you say, it's never going to go your way. And yeah, one race definitely doesn't define you. And I could have been a lot kinder to myself in that moment, when really, like, for weeks, I, like, really beat myself up about it in a really, like, not good way. And so I don't know if anybody else has done that, but yeah, definitely try and be kind to yourself, and realize that, there's a lot more to your life than that one race, and you can always come again.
And I think it's even less, mate. I think it's like 0.01. Like, it's crazy when you actually look, like, worldwide population. It's not a normal thing to do. I had somebody on recently called Lily, and she was very articulate in the way that she kind of spoke about things becoming normality, because that is it. And especially, like, across social and stuff now, when you see all these guys and girls going really, really quick, that becomes very normal, and you're like, realistically, you need to remind yourself all the time, like, that isn't actually normal. It's not normal to be going out and running sub 3 hours in your first marathon. It's not a normal thing to happen. It's just because we're kind of taking in that. So like you say, it's definitely not something to beat yourself up about and be harsh to yourself about. I want to talk about Life in a Minute.
Sure.
Your series on Instagram. Where was that idea born? And you've had some great people already. I know we're only a few episodes deep, but it must be nice to be able to share a bit of time with them and share some words with them as well.
100%, man. Yeah. Where did it come from? I think it was just like, primarily it was like, well, it was a couple of things back in the day, and the reason why I'm sat here now with a Rode microphone. I didn't just get it for this podcast. It has been in the
thought it was special.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, unfortunately, mate. But so basically, back in the day, I had a podcast called the Back on Track podcast, which is obviously kind of like where my handle comes from, and I really enjoyed, and it was all about like speaking to people that had to go through some adversity in their lives, and trying to have an inspirational message at the end of that to help other people going through their own tough time. And it didn't, it did all right, but it didn't take off, in the way that I hoped back in the day. And I think part of the reason was because, it's quite difficult to grow long form content in some ways, especially if you don't have a profile when you're starting that up. And so, when my Instagram page started to grow in the way that it did, I was like, have a really like nice opportunity now to bring back that like sharing other people's stories element that I'm really passionate about, but in a much more like digestible way, in just like a minute format. It's more like, a minute and a half, but Life in a Minute sounds better than Life in a Minute and a half. So that's what it's going to stay as. But yeah, so that's where it kind of came from. I've been doing the interviewing stuff since quite a long time ago, and also just like it's good to vary. I feel like it's good to vary the sort of content that I'm putting out, as well as the like the sort of deeper videos and the storytelling videos that I put out about myself. I think it's nice to just feature other people, and there's so much that we can learn from other people's stories, right? And so that's kind of where it came from, and yeah, just keen to like keep doing it. The best thing about it for me, sort of selfishly, is that it's throughout this whole not drinking thing, like I've been grappling with a bit of social anxiety, and I've been quite insular at times, really. Like I've ducked a lot of like social events that I would have gone to previously, whereas now I'm forced to go out and meet like a new person every week, or a couple of new people every week, to film these episodes. And it's been absolutely wicked to like just meet loads of new people, and a couple of friendships are sort of coming out of it as well. So yeah, it's been really, really cool in that sense. But yeah, excited to see where it goes.
And we'll finish with this, man, because I think this is a nice way to cap things off. If I want you to think somebody's dropped you a DM, okay, and they've said like that your content's really impacted them. It's really helped them through a tough time, and they kind of want some advice on how to keep pushing forward, how to take it day by day, how to get through the difficult time that they might be in. What would you say to them?
Wow. Yeah, that's a really big and important question. And so I think what I would say is my favorite like expression or phrase, and like actually have it tattooed on me, as wanky as that sounds, is this too shall pass. And that's like the idea that when you're going through adversity, whether that's mental health related or whatever it might be, it feels in that moment like it's really permanent, like it's never going to end. For some reason, our minds just like start catastrophizing it in that way, and we can't see a way out. And what I would just remind people is that everything that you're experiencing is temporary. Eventually it has to subside, and something else will take its place. And if you're trying your best to pull in the right direction, then life tends to reward you in a good way for that. And at times, if you're unable to pull in the right direction so much yourself, then make sure you're leaning on other people to help you do that when you're not able to. But it's just that, really, understanding that nothing is permanent, and that you're a lot stronger than you know. And if I can get through, from the depths of being suicidal to now, being a bit excited about, life and my future, then there's no reason why you can't as well.